It goes on top of the head. Like that. No, like up here. And I think we got it! Oh. Here, why don't you go take to the side, figure out if we have pins or bobby pins or something that'll keep this thing on my head. Okay. Well, as you can see here, we're preparing for our graduation, which is coming up very soon. So while Chester's busy trying to figure out how on earth we can keep that hat on top of our heads throughout the ceremony, I'm going to give you 10 pieces of college advice. It's supposed to be scary, so this one, I don't know, this seems kind of obvious. Colleges can be a scary time when you're leaving school, you might be leaving your house for the first time, you might be leaving your town that you've known for all your life. I know for me, I went completely across from the country. I was living more in the Southwest and now I'm all the way over on the East Coast, and that's going to change again after graduation. So such a big transition can be scary. You're in an entirely new place, you've got an entirely new surroundings, you don't know where things are or how things around you work, you don't know the people around you, and then on top of that, you have to do school. What's up with that? In all seriousness, though, it can be scary when you first start, and it's supposed to be. Freshmen are a very terrifying time, but, you know, the first year of college is supposed to be the year when you figure things out and you slowly settle into a pattern that works well for you. So yes, if you're not scared, I'd be surprised if you weren't, but being scared about college is normal. It's totally okay, and you tend to get over it halfway through freshman year because by then you figure out how things work. Advice number 2, be willing to compromise. Now this compromise, it mostly has to do with the people you're living with. Most people are going to end up living in a dorm, and when you live in a dorm, about 99.999% of the time you're going to end up living in a room with someone you don't actually know. And there are things now where you can, fill out surveys and say what personalities work best with yours. But at the end of the day, you really don't know what'll work when you get your roommate. And sometimes it doesn't work, which is why you can switch out roommates every year. So the point about this is compromise is key, especially if you're working with a roommate that you may or may not get along with that well. By compromise, just determine times of what the room is for. Figure out when your sleeping schedule is, when your waking schedule is, how much noise each of you make, how well you sleep when there is noise happening in the room. Because that can be a very big factor. If someone doesn't sleep very well and just sort of your rough rustling around wakes them up, you need to keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is when to have downtime, make a schedule of figuring out when your classes are. Sometimes they'll go along with your roommates, sometimes the classes will sort of clash, so they'll be in the room on break while you're in class and vice versa, and that can work really great because then each of you get a little bit of alone time. However, if this is not the case, I would suggest coming up with a schedule and figuring out the times where you would like to be alone in the room, the times where the roommate would like to be alone in the room. That way, each of you gets at least some period of time within the room. However, if you're in a triple or a quad, forget about private time. You're not getting it, man. I was in a triple my freshman year. I did not get a moment of privacy. And in a way, that was almost sort of a good breaking point because you don't always get the privacy that you would like to get. It's not guaranteed, even though you do feel like it's something that needs to be done. But just keep that in mind when you're rooming with people, especially if you're rooming with more than one person. You might not get the privacy you would like, and you just kind of have to learn how to deal with it. Headphones and earbuds become your best friends. With that, it stifles any loud computer noises that might interrupt your fellow roommates. Along the same facts with compromising, it's important to sort of figure out chores. And yes, there will be chores in college. You don't necessarily have to do them, but you find over time that if you don't do them, the place just kind of becomes a giant pigsty. So you want to figure out what parts of the room you're going to clean, who's taking out the trash, who's going to do the dishes, stuff like that. So that way your room ends up as a nice, somewhat neat, it doesn't have to be completely neat, but presentable. Then it's presentable. And it's not you're walking around on eggshells, not stepping on things. One of my roommates for several years, she was great, but she had a habit of leaving her clothes everywhere on the floor. And I learned how to navigate with that because I was a pretty easygoing when it came to clothes on the floor, but I know some people can't stand that. So just keep that in mind. You could get a super messy roommate or one that's not so, or that's super neat. So just work out a way to try and keep things nice and tidy in a position where both of you feel comfortable being in the room. And of course, with any room, feel free to personalize it. I mean, yes, you might only be in this room for a year or a couple of years, but that's still a pretty long time, so don't be afraid to put up some flair, print out stuff, paste them on the walls, and then at the end of the year you can just take it all down and do it again. Now let's focus on academics and finding a balance with that. Because college, you do have classes, you do have schoolwork. It's kind of weird. When you're a kid, you're like, school and home should never clash. That's pretty much the definition of college right there. School and home are clashing. It's crazy. It's weird how you get used to it. But you do need to find a balance between when you study, when you do your schoolwork, and when you can socialize. For me, I always tended to lean a little more heavily on the academic side, especially coming in a department like the education department. There was just a lot of stuff that needed to be done. A lot of our free time was spent working in classrooms and learning how to teach within a classroom setting, which was great for our degree, but it wasn't so great when trying to have a social life. I think I only ended up with maybe 2 or 3 close friends that I still somewhat keep in touch with now. But the point of that is it can sort of consume you if you're not careful. And the same goes for the opposite end of the spectrum too. There is the possibility, and you start to hear about this more, where people socialize so much and they go out and they party and they have fun, but then they never get any of their work done. So I'm sort of the academic extreme, and the common party people are the other extreme. So neither one is really that good. What you want to do is you want to figure out a balance between the two. So figure out your own work ethic, know what helps you get stuff, when do you actually get stuff done, and then from there you can sort of schedule, okay, these would be the times when I would do my academic work, these are my classes, this is when I would get my work done, and then the free times in between that you can either take for your own silent time, or you can take that time to, get out and get to know the campus and get to know people. So just making sure of having a nice balance between that so you don't end up in your room all the time. Of course, if you are like me and you do end up being in your room all the time, you can always start making YouTube videos. So latching onto a club, a group, or an organization. This is crucial because whether you're on a small campus where everything's kind of a bit more cliquey, or you're on a large campus where things are so spread out that most likely you only know a small portion of the campus, it's important to find a place where you feel comfortable and find people that are interested in the same things you're interested in, so that way you can kind of fall into a smaller social rhythm and feel a place that you're comfortable with that isn't, academics or just being in your room alone. So there are many club opportunities, there's many different student councils. There's clubs that focus on diversity, there's clubs that focus on film, there's some clubs that are sponsored by the college itself, and there's some sort of more, we decided to form this thing that we're doing off to the side. So it can be a mix of many things, but you don't always have to restrict yourselves to just clubs. That's where I kind of put in organizations or groups here. For me, the group/organization thing I was doing was the Sunday school puppet shows at a church that's about 3 minutes away from the campus that I'm on. So it was super easy to get over there, and it was something that I had been doing for years, doing Sunday school shows at churches. So it was an easy thing for me to latch on to and kind of take over, and I don't want to say improve it, but just change it a little bit more so they're sort of more open to be able to do more things. And that was kind of my niche. That was my thing, was the puppetry and the church group. That was my thing. But you don't have to have a things specifically tied to religion or anything. Just attaching to yourself to any sort of club or a group, just having something that you can fall back on during the week. Another almost club thing that I did is I would do symphonic band. So I had been playing clarinet for, I think it's been about 15 years now or so. And I didn't want to lose that because I had had all those years, so I joined the band to sort of keep it up but not be too serious with my clarinet playing. So that was great too. So not only did I sort of have this puppetry / church group thing going on, but I also had a musical band group going on as well. So just having those separate extracurriculars, they don't consume everything that you're doing, but they do give you a nice break between your academics and when you're just kind of lying around. So do what you're passionate about. I'd say the next few are some of the most important points on this list or pieces of advice. Doing what you're passionate about is really, it's easy to sort of not do things that you're passionate about because you get stuck in the academic rhythm and the things you have to do for your degree. And in the midst of that, and sort of with extracurriculars or just social clubbing stuff, it can be difficult to sort of take the time to do something that you're passionate about and actually really enjoy doing it. For me, a lot of that was drawing. I was doing puppetry at the church, but it was limited to that for a very long time, and I didn't really have many opportunities to do sort of puppetry outside of that. So there was that. There was drawing and even story writing. There were just a lot of things that I enjoyed doing, but I wasn't really taking the time to do those things. And in doing so, I just kind of started dropping them over time. And that's not something you should do. If you're really passionate about something and it's something that it might not become your job, but it's something you want to keep up, it's something you want to grow off of, and it's something you want to learn more about, don't forget to do that. Even if you spend, say, 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day. I usually try to spend 15 minutes to half an hour a day just drawing or writing or doing puppetry. Just do something that you're passionate about. Take the time for that if it's not already connected into what you're already doing through academics or clubs or organizations, because your passion is really a really big part of yourself, and it's a part of yourself that you don't want to lose. Okay, when I say you have to fight, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get into an all-out fist brawl with someone. What I mean by that is, and this was especially hard for me to learn because I don't like confrontation very often. I guess I kind of have a hard time standing up for myself because I don't want to upset the person I'm having a conflict with, because I'm afraid of the consequences that might come from that. But it is important to note that sometimes you do have to stand up and fight for yourself. Maybe not so much in a physical sense, but in a mental and emotional sense. And a good example of this is with my degree. When we came into the education department at this institution, they told us flat out right that they were training us to teach in public schools and what we would have to do for that, what the state standards were. And that was it. That would be our lives. And for the most part, they were right in the fact that they were training us to do that, and they trained us very well. I learned a lot of things, and if I were to ever be put into a public school setting, I'm sure I could handle it. But over time, I began to learn that it wasn't really what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't feel it was what I was supposed to be doing, even though I technically could do it. I had the notion that I wasn't doing my best, and I wasn't giving the children the best that they needed. And that was sort of the biggest thing with me, is I felt if I wasn't doing the best for the kids, what they needed the most, then I couldn't be in this position. And I know some teachers, they technically aren't that either, and they're teaching anyway, but I'm sort of a firm believer in you need to have good, solid teachers that are what's best for the students, and I just personally felt I wasn't the best for the students I was being given. So within that came fighting, because over time I decided I didn't want to end up teaching in a public school setting. And because that's what the degree program was structured towards, there was a lot of conflict. There still is kind of a bit of conflict. It's mostly resolved at this point, especially this close to graduation. But the moment I made that decision, I knew that I would have to fight. I would have to tell the department this was my decision, and we would have to fill out paperwork and alternatives to sort of finish it up so I could still get my degree but not go down the same path that everyone else was going down. And that was difficult because there were issues, and there were some that tried to stop me, and it was hard to sort of put your foot down and say, no, I've come to this conclusion and I'm sticking by it. But it's very important, especially because college is supposed to be helping you with your future. And if it feels like that it's not doing that anymore, then something needs to change. And you have to be willing to fight for that change. So sort of a follow-up to the last two pieces of advice, just don't lose who you are. And you might not even know exactly who you are, and that's okay. That's kind of the second point of college, and in a sense that's also supposed to be the point of high school, but not everyone discovers who they are in high school. And college just kind of gives you that second step towards the working world and figuring out what you're supposed to be doing, what you're meant for, what you feel like works best for you and your personality. And like I explained in the previous advice, I discovered that being a public school teacher, as the program was leading me to do, was not exactly the best thing for me, and it certainly was not the best thing for the students that I was teaching. But I did know two things about myself. I knew that I loved working with children, and I knew that I loved education. I just didn't love the classroom setting. And sort of with that in mind, I began to look into things outside of that. And in a way, that kind of led me more towards entertainment, because entertainment was the third thing I'm super passionate about. I've always been very big into seeing the entertainment world, especially on the children's spectrum with children's television. So it's kind of evolved from me being, okay, well, I guess I can only use my skills in an education classroom setting, to I could potentially use my skills in a children's television setting. And I feel I could present a lot more to that than to the classroom setting. And while I'm not there yet directly, there are still a lot of things that mesh the two together, the children and the education together, that I'm able to go out and experiment. And for all I know, I could end up in one of those other places. And, I would be perfectly fine with that, because it would still be combining things that I loved, and it would just be doing it not in a school setting, which is also what I was looking for. So the point of that is, it took me most of my undergraduate career to figure that out. And the important thing is that you don't want to confine to what your degree is telling you you're going to do. For some of you, that might be great. That might be exactly what you want to do. That might be who you want to be. And that's great then. If that's exactly what you follow, then go ahead and do that, because it does work for a lot of people. But for some, that might not necessarily be the case, or you're okay with what you're being taught and where they're leading you, but you don't want to close off the door to other options. So with that in mind, just remember who you are, remember the things that you love, the things you enjoy to do, and how you really want to contribute outside in the working world, because those are the things that'll help you figure out who you are and where's your place within your degree and within outside of your degree. College can be great. A lot of people stay in college for more than 4 years. Some go right from their undergraduate to their graduate. Some go to different colleges or universities for that. Some just stay in the same place. If you're at a university, universities do undergrad and graduate, and that's great. But at times it can feel like this is your world and everything outside of it doesn't exist. And when that happens, seeing bits and pieces of the outside world can be a bit jarring because you feel you can't really do anything about it. You're just kind of trapped here. But it's important to know that this is really just a very small portion of your life. These 4 or 8 years, or however many years you decide to be in college, that's not your entire life right there. It's just a stepping stone to more parts of your life and leading you in places you might not even know where you're being led yet. So it's just important to keep in mind that there is life outside of college, and college is not your entire life. That's kind of been something hard for me to remember because I'm in a college where we're a bit more isolated. And I'm sure for people that are in colleges in sort of out rural areas, or sort of colleges where you have to drive a ways to get to a town or a gas station, it can feel the same because the outside world isn't within walking distance. You have to drive. And if you're like me and you didn't have a car during your time in college, that can be especially tough because you can't walk anywhere. You have to rely on other people to get off campus. And that can make it feel like there really is nothing outside of campus. However, there is life outside of campus, I promise. There is more to discover. This part of college is just for you to begin to hone in on your skills and learn more and figure out exactly where you want to go and what you want to do. And that's really just a very small part of your life. So enjoy it while you have it, but it is only temporary. When you're working towards a degree, you get a series of advisors or professors that are helping show you what are the right steps to take, what are the right classes to take in order to get that degree. Many degrees have a set of requirements, a set of classes that need to be fulfilled in order to get the degree. And on top of that, you'll probably have what are known as core or base classes. These are the classes that the college just requires you to take. Language is a big one. I think language is one of the few classes you can technically pass with an exam if you've taken a couple of years of language before. But you might not necessarily pass it, so just be prepared if you end up in a language class. I guess the point here is it seems like every class you take is a requirement. It's kind of like, back in school, you didn't really have a say in what classes you wanted to take. They just kind of gave them to you as these are the things you need to do. So just do these classes within these certain amount of years and you'll be set. And in a way it feels like you're being confined to what you can do because it feels you can't step a foot out and go, well, what if I want to try this class? And I mean, college is supposed to give you a chance to sort of look at something that you normally don't do and go, I want to try that. It might not work, it might not be great, but you just want to try it. And sure, it might not follow the path to your degree, but that's kind of the point. So with this, it's your advisors do mean the best. Your professors do mean the best because they know the steps that need to be taken to finish your degree and what needs to be done. But at the same time, don't let all of the requirements confine and determine what you're supposed to be taking and when. Be able to give yourself and let them know you want to take a chance to try different things and see what happens. Okay, last one here, and this might be one of the biggest things. You can figure out how to navigate college, you can compromise, you can balance stuff out, you can decide what classes you want to take, how you want to take them, you can fulfill what needs to be done for your degree. But no matter what you do, try to do it and keep others in mind. And by that, I don't mean you have to go into social work or, some sort of community service degree. The point in this is every job has its place in the outside world, and every job, whether you realize it or not, is supposed to help affect and benefit some population of people. So when you're going into your degree, keep in mind exactly how this position is going to affect others, and if that's the way you want to affect others. For example, scientists, they discover stuff about the natural world. We're always learning more stuff about the natural world each day, and that's great. So science is you can present knowledge to the general public that they might not have known about the world they're living in. You can give them advice on exactly how they should live in order to have healthy bodies or to live in a healthy environment. So that way you're affecting people's everyday lives. When you're a teacher, you're obviously affecting the next generation and the education they're getting. But even going so far as to, with literature and music and the arts, you're affecting people in different ways. You might be wanting to open their eyes to something they've never seen before, or present a message to them that's kind of in the back of their heads, but they don't really think about very often. Or all it could be is you're just trying to bring about an emotion. And I think the crucial thing with any job is bringing an emotion with people. If you can resonate with the outside world, then you're able to connect with others. And that's sort of one of the parts that helps bring community, which is something that seems to become more increasingly difficult. Not so much because of technology, although there are studies that say that is part of it, but just because we as people don't really get along that well with each other, even though we want to. And one of the key ways to getting along with each other is to be able to relate. So if you have a job that affects others by relating to them and helping bring them closer together, then I say you've done a pretty good thing. So thank you everyone or those of you who are watching, for listening to these 10 pieces of advice about college. Whether you're just sort of on the cusp of college, or you're in the midst of it right now, or you've been out of college for a while and you just kind of wanted to hear about a younger person's experience about sort of what college is like now. Thank you for listening. These are pieces of advice that I've sort of gained from my own experience. So in a way, I kind of put a little part of myself out there, which I guess, I don't know. That can be hard to do, but I'm glad I did, and I hope everyone out there that is watching got something from it. What are you doing back, Chester? Oh, I couldn't find any pins. Oh, you couldn't? Okay, let's look for them together. Alright. In the meantime, if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and put a pause up and press that like button, and don't forget to comment and subscribe. And also don't forget, you can see other stuff from Short Puppet Arts on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And I will see you guys after graduation. Goodbye!